Welcome back to Panatel's. This is a place where dark history slowly comes to light, and forgotten stories are finally heard at last. A deep, heavy silence hung over the city, a silence that tasted like fear itself. Caracas, the bustling heart of Venezuela, slept under a thick blanket of darkness, completely unaware that the storm had already begun. They called it Operation Absolute Resolve, a name that sounded like it was pulled straight from a nightmare. This was a plan born in the sterile silence of secret rooms, monitored by unblinking camera satellites tracing orbits in the cold of space and minds, meticulously trained to see every single heartbeat of a man some called a tyrant and others their president. Months. That's how long they had been watching. Months of patient observation. Months of waiting for the perfect moment. Months of counting the breaths of a nation holding its own. The preparation was a global, silent ballet of power. Whispers traveled across secure channels, speaking of specialized aircraft gathering in the Caribbean region. Warships, sleek and deadly, sliced through the midnight waters, their wakes disappearing into the black. Invisible signals pulsed through the sky, carrying commands and coordinates. In command centers thousands of miles away, officers paced restlessly, their faces illuminated by the glow of monitors. Papers were stamped with finality. Eyes, red from lack of sleep, stayed wide open, fixated on the endgame. And then the signal came. It wasn't a sound or a flash of light. It was a darkness greater than the night itself. Not just the absence of light, but a deliberate, calculated void. Suddenly, Caracas blinked out. The entire city was plunged into an abyss. No streetlights, no flickering televisions, no familiar hum of generators kicking in. There was only the distant, growing echo of engines, a sound that seemed to be climbing, getting closer, ascending toward the now invisible city. The first explosions were soft thuds on the horizon, distant and almost dismissive. Then they grew nearer, louder, more personal. Low-flying aircraft, almost invisible against the starless sky, carved fleeting shadows across empty plazas and silent boulevards. At the heavily fortified compound in Fortuna, the seat of military power, the guards hesitated. It was just for a moment, a single breath of time too short to properly name, but far too long to ever forget. In that sliver of a second, the world tilted on its axis. Elite operators, trained for this exact brand of chaos, moved like phantoms through the compound's defenses. They were swift, silent, and ruthlessly efficient. The shock was too profound, the action too fast. Inside, at the heart of the storm, the leader of a nation stood on the very edge of history. This was a man who had weathered crippling sanctions, massive street protests, widespread hunger, and armed rebellions. He had stared down his opponents and held on to power with an iron grip. But now, he faced a different kind of storm, one that didn't knock on the door, but simply blew it off its hinges. Shots of light from muzzle flashes strobed through cracked windows. The sharp, metallic sound of steel on steel echoed through the halls. In that moment, he was faced with a final, stark choice: flight or surrender. They found him, not on a throne, not behind a grand desk, but in the rubble of surprise. The sharp, definitive click of handcuffs echoed in the sudden quiet. A woman, his wife, was beside him, a smear of blood where light and life should have been. They did not speak. No words could fit the enormity of that moment. What could you possibly say when your world, and the world of a nation, has just been irrevocably shattered? And then, just as quickly as they had arrived, they were gone. They were lifted into the night sky, carried away like shadows fleeing the dawn. Helicopters, those steel birds laden with the heavy weight of inevitability, ascended into the darkness. They crossed borders that, according to international law, were not supposed to be crossed, disappearing into the vast, indifferent night. The entire operation, from the first blackout to the extraction, was a masterpiece of brutal, shocking efficiency. By morning, The rest of the world was waking up, brewing coffee, checking the news. And the news was unbelievable. The sitting president of Venezuela, a sovereign head of state, was standing in a Manhattan courtroom. He wasn't presented as a leader or a diplomat, but as something almost unrecognizable. A suspect, a defendant, a symbol. He was a question mark wrapped in a dozen federal charges, the kind of indictment no international tribunal had ever dared to test on a figure so towering, so controversial. The fallout was immediate and chaotic. Some called it justice, long overdue. They celebrated it as a victory for democracy and human rights. Others called it a brazen act of aggression, a violation of national sovereignty that set a dangerous new precedent. International law seemed to say one thing, but the reality of power, raw and unapologetic, said another. At the United Nations, emergency meetings were called. Diplomats whispered in hushed tones about sovereignty, precedent, and the future of international relations. But no one, not even the most seasoned statesman, could offer a clear answer. The rulebook had just been torn up. Back in Caracas, a new name now sat in the presidential chair. But power is a ghost. It needs a body to inhabit, a structure to command. Without its charismatic, if divisive, leader, loyalty began to fracture in the silence. Fear, cold and creeping, seeped into the empty hallways of the Miraflores Palace. The old certainties were gone, replaced by a terrifying vacuum. No one knew what would come next. Would the nation stabilize? Would it descend into civil war? Who were the new masters? And so, in the quiet before the next storm inevitably gathers, a single question hangs in the air. It lingers like smoke in a room that no one wants to leave. When a nation's leader can be seized from his bed in the dead of night and flown across the world to face foreign justice, who truly holds the power? Who is really in charge? No answer comes. There is only the echo of footsteps fading into the dark. Thanks for watching. This story is a fictional scenario, a thought experiment based on geopolitical tensions. If you found this compelling, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next deep dive. See you in the next video.